Hi, welcome everybody. Today we are presenting Chapter 11 of Information Systems for Business and Beyond. In this chapter, we will explore the concepts of globalization and digital divide. Here are what to expect in today's presentation. We will be diving into globalization and what it means. What role has information technology played into driving globalization? Alongside that, we will also talk about the different issues and repercussions brought about by a global economy. And lastly, we will take a look at digital divide and its different stages. Let's begin by defining globalization. What is globalization? Globalization refers to the integration of goods, services, and culture among the nations of the world. In many ways, globalization has existed since the days of European colonization. This means that globalization is not necessarily a new phenomenon. Advances like telecommunication, phone calls and SMS, and transportation either by air or by sea accelerated globalization exponentially. The internet has wired the world. It has made all nations virtually next-door neighbors. So if you want to reach someone from across the world, you could easily just send a WhatsApp message, maybe a Facebook call, or send an email to communicate with them. The internet is truly a worldwide phenomenon. As of December 2021, the internet was being used by over 5.2 billion people worldwide. This is about 66.2% of the global population. From its initial beginnings in the United States in the 1970s to the development of the World Wide Web in the 1990s to the social networks and e-commerce of today. And as a side note, 4.6 billion people around the world now use social media with an average daily spent of 2 hours and 27 minutes. This goes to show that the internet continues to increase the integration between countries, making globalization a fact of life for citizens all over the world. Time for a sidebar. How does your internet speed compare with the rest of the world? I know many of us are already familiar with speedtest.net. We have used it at one point in time when we wanted to measure the speed of our internet connection. So it's one of the most trusted sites to determine our internet speed. And if you have a second, go ahead and go to speedtest.net to see your results. So how do we compare with the rest of the world? Here is a graphical representation of the average speed of the top 15 countries with the fastest internet connection as of 2021 in a study done by cable.co.uk. Jersey, with a 274.27 Mbps, garnered the top spot. Singapore, which was top 1 in the years 2017 and 2018, now ranks 11th with an average internet speed of 97.61 Mbps. Now for a quick comparison. Philippines has an average speed of 16.84 Mbps. So if you download a 5 gigabyte movie, it can take you 40 minutes and 32 seconds versus if you download the same movie in Iceland, which ranks 3rd in the list, it can only take 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Moving on, let's now talk about Manuel Castells and Thomas Friedman. In 1996, social sciences researcher Manuel Castells published The Rise of the Network Society. This publication posits that having a world connected via the internet has some massive implications, including on economic activities. He identified new ways on how different economic activities were being organized around new technological networks. According to him, it is an economy with the capacity to work as a unit in real time on a planetary scale. Later on, in 2005, Thomas Friedman published his book entitled The World is Flat. In this book, he uses anecdotal evidence to present the impact that the personal computer, the internet and communication software have on businesses, specifically the impact on globalization. He characterized three eras of globalization. We have Globalization 1.0 from 1492 until about 1800s, then Globalization 2.0 from 1800s until 2000, to the era that we are in today, Globalization 3.0, which began in the year 2000. Globalization 1.0 was centered around countries. It was about how much horsepower, wind power, and steam power a country had and how creatively it was deployed. The world shrank from size large to size medium. In Globalization 2.0, the dynamic force driving change was multinational companies. The world shrank from size medium to size small. Globalization 3.0 is our current era. The convergence of the personal computer, fiber optic internet connections, and software has created a flat world platform that allows small groups and even individuals to go global. The world has shrunk from size small to size tiny. According to Friedman, this third era of globalization was brought about by information technology. Some of the specific technologies include graphical user interface for the personal computer, the build out of the internet infrastructure during the dot-com boom, which we already talked about in our previous discussions, and lastly, the introduction of software, which we also discussed extensively before, to automate and integrate business processes. These three technologies came together to create a platform for global collaboration. Number 1. Before, using a computer was relatively difficult, but by making the personal computer something that anyone could use, the computer became a tool of virtually every person, not just those intrigued by technology. Friedman says, the personal computer made people more productive and, as the internet evolved, made it simpler to communicate information worldwide. Number 2. During the late 1990s, telecommunications companies laid thousands of miles of fiber optic cable all over the world, turning network communications into a commodity. At the same time, the internet protocols such as email, web pages, and network communications became standards that were available for free and used by everyone through their email programs and web browsers. Number 3 is something many of us can relate because software systems and other applications have become so intertwined with our daily business processes. Friedman calls this workflow software, by which he means software that allows people to work together more easily and allows different software and databases to integrate with each other more easily. Examples include payment processing systems, CRMs, ERPs, and the like. Economist Pankaj Ghemawat authored the book World 3.0 in 2011 in an attempt to provide a more moderate and research-based analysis of globalization. While Friedman relied on anecdotes, Ghemawat's approach was to research economic data, then draw conclusions about globalization. Here are some of his results. Internet traffic that is routed across international borders at 18%. Global exports as portion of the value of all goods produced in the world at 20%. In conclusion, while the internet has had an impact on the world's economy, it may well be that domestic economies can be expected to continue to be the main focus in most countries. The new era of globalization allows virtually any business like Samsung, Amazon, and even our own Jollibee to become international. But just like any other phenomenon, it has its own set of advantages and disadvantages. Let's discuss some of them. Some of the advantages include the ability to locate expertise and labor around the world, the ability to operate 24 hours a day, and access to larger markets for their products. So, for the first advantage, instead of drawing employees from their local area, organizations can now hire people from the global labor pool. This allows organization to pay a lower labor cost for the same work based on the prevailing wage in different countries. For number two, with employees in different time zones all around the world, an organization can literally operate around the clock, handing off work on projects from one part of the world to another as the normal business day ends in one region and begins in another. And lastly, once a product is being sold online, it is available for purchase from a worldwide customer base. Even if a company's products do not appeal beyond its own country's borders, being online has made the product more visible to consumers within that country. On the other hand, in order to fully take advantage of these new capabilities, companies need to understand that there are also challenges in dealing with employees and customers from different cultures. Some of these challenges include infrastructure differences, labor laws and regulations, legal restrictions, language, customs and preferences, and even international shipping. For infrastructure differences, each country has its own infrastructure with varying levels of quality and bandwidth. So, for example, internet speeds, as what we saw earlier, Philippines has a slightly slower internet speed compared to maybe Iceland or Singapore. And then we also have labor laws and regulations. Different countries have different laws and regulations. A company that wants to hire employees from other countries must understand the different regulations and concerns. Then we have legal restrictions. Many countries have restrictions on what can be sold or how a product can be advertised. And then, of course, we have language, customs, and preferences. Every country has its own unique culture, which a business must consider when trying to market a product there. Additionally, different countries have different preferences. And then lastly, for international shipping, shipping products between countries in a timely manner can be challenging. Inconsistent address formats, dishonest custom agents, and prohibited shipping costs are all factors that must be considered when trying to deliver products internationally. Because of these challenges, many businesses choose not to expand globally, either for labor or for customers. Whether a business has its own website or relies on a third party, the question of whether or not to globalize must be carefully considered. We have now reached the part two of our presentation, wherein we'll discuss the concept of digital divide. As the internet continues to make inroads across the world, it is also creating a separation between those who have access and those who do not. This separation is called the digital divide. The ACM Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct focuses on issues involving the digital divide that could prevent certain categories of people, like those from low-income households, senior citizens, single-parent children, the undereducated, minorities, and the residents of rural areas from receiving adequate access to the wide variety of resources offered by computer technology. Just like in the Philippines, there are still a lot of areas where they don't have access to the internet or even computer or mobile devices. Solutions to the digital divide have had mixed success over the years. Many times, just providing internet access and or computing devices is not enough to bring true internet access to a country, region, or neighborhood. In 2006, web usability consultant Jacob Nielsen wrote an article where he breaks the digital divide up into three stages: the economic divide, the usability divide, and the empowerment divide. The economic divide is what many call the digital divide. This is the idea that some people can afford to have a computer and internet access while others cannot. Nielsen asserts that the economic divide is a moot point and we should not focus our resources on solving it. Because of Moore's law, the price of hardware will continue to drop, and at this point, people will now have access to digital technologies. The second stage is the usability divide. This is concerned with the fact that technology remains so complicated that many people couldn't use a computer even if they got one for free. And even for those who can use a computer, accessing all the benefits of having one is beyond their understanding. According to Nielsen, we know how to help these users, but we are not doing it because there is little profit in doing so. The last and third stage is empowerment divide. Empowerment is the most difficult to solve. It is concerned with how we use technology to empower ourselves. Very few users truly understand the power that digital technologies can give them. Nielsen explains that his and others' research has shown that very few users contribute content to the internet, or use advanced search, or can even distinguish paid search ads from organic search results. Many people will limit what they can do online by accepting the basic, default settings of their computer and not work to understand how they can truly be empowered. In addition to Nielsen's economic, usability, and empowerment divides, the Miniwatts marketing group sought to further clarify the meaning of digital divide by acknowledging that the divide is more than just who does or does not have access to the internet. They have identified the following concerns: social mobility, democracy, and economic growth. For children with lower socioeconomic status, they will have no to very limited access to computer education. For democracy, we have seen this during our recently concluded national elections, where greater use of the internet can lead to healthier democracies. And lastly, for economic growth, greater use of the internet in developing countries like the Philippines could provide a shortcut to economic advancement. In 2010, the European Council adopted the strategy Europe 2020, a new strategy for jobs and growth. This was inspired by the continuing digital divide. The strategy concentrates on the key areas like research and development, climate and energy, education, social inclusion, and poverty reduction. This puts stronger focus on sustainable development and economic activities, high employment rates, and inclusive growth. For our second and final sidebar, to bridge the digital divide, Paul Kim, the Assistant Dean and Chief Technology Officer of the Stanford Graduate School of Education, designed a project to address the digital divide for children in developing countries. The researchers developed a mobile device called TeacherMate, which contained a game designed to help children learn math. What the researchers found is that children can indeed adopt and teach themselves mobile learning technologies, and that in order to be effective, they had to customize their technology and tailor their implementation to the specific group they were trying to reach. That concludes our presentation. Today, we discussed globalization and its implications, as well as the impact it is having on the world. We also talked about how information technology has driven change on a global scale. We have also identified the different advantages and disadvantages of globalization. And finally, we examined how globalization can exacerbate digital divide and how solutions can be implemented. That's all for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, bye.